So I'm going to talk about how children might come across pornography online, what effects it might have on them, and how to talk to them about it. In Ireland, about half of boys will have seen images of a sexual nature by the time they're aged 10 to 13. Mostly they find them online, but also a lot on TV and film and some printed materials. About a quarter of girls come across it at that age, but their first exposure tends to be when they're a little bit older. There's a difference between age groups, between boys and girls, on whether they actually seek out these materials or not. And younger kids and girls are more likely to encounter it without actually wanting to. And that can be more confusing and upsetting for them than for the older kids and boys who've intentionally sought it out. Girls are about twice as likely to be upset about encountering it, and they're more likely to find it demeaning and disgusting than boys. So the good news is that most kids, about 84% of boys, 93% of girls, understand that what they're watching is not realistic. And most kids aren't actually very affected or upset by what they see. Research on pornography is one of those areas where there's a lot of conflicting findings. Sometimes the methods that are used in the research aren't great. There can be some bias in the research design. And then media reporting on it, like a lot of hot topics, tends to be very sensationalized as well. So the messages that parents are getting about it can be a little bit confusing and can make them feel overwhelmed. The current research shows that there aren't really any concrete conclusions we can make about a negative effect on young people who consume pornography. For example, there's no strong correlation between pornography use and violence. What we do know from the research is that good quality sex education is hugely important for understanding pornography and consent and for reducing risky sexual behaviors. But unfortunately, most kids aren't getting that in school in Ireland. And so these conversations really need to be happening at home. Talking about pornography should really be one component of a larger discussion about the context in which it's situated, because there's a lot of factors that will affect how kids react to it and how they use it. It's important to have conversations around relationships, what healthy relationships look like, about intimacy and consent, about other media consumption, like what film and TV and games they're watching and engaging in. It's also important to talk about how society views and treats women, how the media reports on gendered or sexual crime, for example. Pornography is very much a social and cultural issue, as well as a private one. And these need to be very regular conversations with your kids, so not just a once off. So the single most important thing that a parent or caregiver should aim to achieve, particularly in relation to online risk, is having an open channel of communication and to build trust with their children. Kids should feel able to come to you if they see something that upsets them without worrying that you're going to react and be angry and take away their technology. Again, it might be appropriate sometimes to delete a particular app or to set some boundaries, but this should really be discussed in a democratic approach, if possible. So finding solutions with your children if they come across something that upsets them. Ideally, you would start conversations about these topics while kids are very young, so before they ever encounter it. Perhaps not specifically about pornography when they're very young, but you could talk about images in film or TV or advertisements and how they're not real, are scripted, and are crafted to appear a particular way. So that'll help develop their critical thinking about media more broadly. And if there's particular news stories or plot lines in TV programs, that can be a very helpful way to lead into a conversation, because it is something that parents often find difficult to talk to their kids about. So maybe asking if their friends have encountered pornography and how they felt about it can be a way to start a conversation as well. Talking about consent can also start from a very young age. So teaching kids about respecting others' boundaries and having others respect their own. So for example, not making them hug somebody if they don't want to. Bear in mind, when kids seek out these things, it can be for curiosity, but it can also be for other reasons. And some of those can be more positive. So it depends on the individual and the context. They might be learning about or exploring questions about puberty, about their own body, their sexual identity. So it might be an opportunity to learn for some of them. For others, particularly for girls and for younger kids, and for those who encounter pornography unexpectedly, it might be more upsetting and sometimes confusing for them. And in your conversations with them from when they're young, it's good to talk to them about how they would deal with coming across pornography or any other distressing content that they might encounter online. Let them know that you're there to listen to them if they need to talk to you about encountering this material, even if they were doing something that they weren't supposed to. explain how to block, report, and mute accounts if they encounter it on social media without intending to. Giving your kids freedom to develop digital skills is hugely important, and having these conversations is a really big part of that.